The auction hall on Kepler Station buzzed with the chatter of 100 different alien species. Vendors called out prices for exotic weapons, rare minerals, and captured creatures from across the galaxy. The air reeked of ozone and alien sweat, thick enough to choke a human. In the far corner, past the expensive lots and prime merchandise, sat a rusted cage that most beings walked past without a second glance. Inside lay what had once been the galaxy's most feared war machine. Vex 7 had seen better days. Much better days. The Kalari warhound stretched nearly 8 feet from nose to tail, his metallic blue-black fur matted and dull. Cybernetic implants jutted from his skull and spine, their lights flickering weakly like dying stars. One of his 6 legs bore an ugly scar where shrapnel had torn through muscle and metal. His golden eyes, once bright with battle fury, now stared at nothing. "What's wrong with this one?" asked a Zephyrian trader, prodding the cage with a tentacle. The auctioneer, a fat Blorian with too many teeth, shrugged his massive shoulders. "War trauma. PTSD, the humans call it. Been through too many battles. Won't fight anymore. Won't even eat properly. Completely useless." The Zephyrian moved on, seeking more profitable investments. Vex 7 had served in the Kalari Empire's military for 12 years. He'd charged through plasma fire on Zerion Prime. He'd hunted rebel leaders through the crystal caves of Mintos 7. He'd stood guard over generals while they planned campaigns that would reshape star systems. But that was before the Battle of Crimson Nebula, before he'd watched his pack get vaporized by human plasma cannons, before he'd spent 3 days trapped under rubble, listening to his packmates die one by one. Before the nightmares started, the Kalari military had tried everything. New programming, memory wipes, enhanced cybernetics. Nothing worked. The moment weapons fired around him, Vex 7 would freeze, his combat system shutting down completely. A war dog that couldn't fight was worse than useless. It was a liability. So they'd sold him to slavers who'd tried to use him for manual labor. When that failed, they'd sold him to a fighting ring. When he refused to fight, they'd beaten him and sold him again. Each sale brought a lower price until he'd ended up here, in the cheapest section of a black market auction on the edge of civilized space. Lot 847, the auctioneer announced. Kalari Warhound Model Vex 7. Some cybernetic damage but still functional for basic labor. Starting bid 50 credits. Silence filled the auction hall. 40 credits? The auctioneer tried. More silence. 20 credits. Surely someone needs a guard dog. A few aliens laughed. Everyone knew warhounds with trauma were unpredictable. They might attack their owners or simply shut down completely. Either way, they were worthless. 10 credits, the auctioneer said desperately. Just 10 credits for a former military asset. That's when she appeared. The human girl couldn't have been more than 16 Earth years old. She stood barely 5 feet tall, with short brown hair and clothes that had seen better days. Her backpack was patched in 3 places and her boots were worn thin. Everything about her screamed broke student or runaway, but her eyes were different. She looked directly at Vex 7 and he looked back. For the first time in months, the warhound lifted his massive head. "I'll take him," she said quietly. The auctioneer blinked his 6 eyes in surprise. "Miss, are you sure? This animal is—" "I said I'll take him." Her voice was soft but firm. She reached into her pocket and pulled out exactly 10 credits. "That's the asking price, right?" The Blorian took her money with obvious reluctance. "You'll need to sign these forms. Liability waivers mostly. The station isn't responsible if he attacks you or damages property or— Where do I sign?" As she scribbled her name on the digital pad, other auction goers began to gather, curious about the human girl buying a broken war machine. Most looked amused. A few looked concerned. One elderly Arcturian actually tried to talk her out of it. "Child, you don't understand what you're buying. These creatures are engineered killers. When they break, they become dangerous." The girl looked up from the forms. Everything dangerous deserves a chance to be something else. The auctioneer handed her a control collar and a shock rod. Standard equipment for handling military assets. The collar will keep him docile and the rod will discipline him if he acts up. She took the collar but left the shock rod on the counter. "I won't need that." Several aliens exchanged glances. Clearly, the human had no idea what she was doing. The cage door opened with a pneumatic hiss. Vex 7 didn't move. He'd learned that movement often led to pain, and staying still was safer. The girl approached slowly, her empty hands visible. She didn't try to put the collar on him immediately. Instead, she knelt down next to the cage opening. "Hey there, big guy," she said softly. "My name's Maya. I know you've had a rough time, but that's over now. You're coming home with me." Vex 7 studied her with ancient, tired eyes. He could smell her scent. Young human, female, no weapons, no fear. Most importantly, no anger. It had been so long since someone had spoken to him without anger or disgust in their voice. Maya reached out slowly, letting him sniff her hand. Her skin was warm and carried the scent of recycled air and cheap soap. When he didn't pull away, she gently touched his snout. "That's it," she whispered. "Nobody's going to hurt you anymore." For reasons he couldn't understand, Vex 7 believed her. Maya clipped the control collar around his neck with obvious reluctance. "I'm sorry about this, but it's required by station law. I promise I'll take it off as soon as we're somewhere safe." The warhound slowly rose to his feet. Even hunched and weakened, he towered over the tiny human girl. The crowd instinctively stepped back, hands moving to weapons, but Vex 7 just stood there, looking down at Maya with something that might have been hope. "Come on." "Boy," she said, turning toward the exit. "Let's get out of here." As they walked through the auction hall, conversation stopped. Aliens stared in amazement at the sight of a broken war machine following a human child like a lost puppy. The girl showed no fear, even when Vex 7's cybernetics sparked and his damaged leg made him stumble. Behind them, the auctioneer shook his head. "Stupid human. That thing will probably eat her before they reach her ship." But as Maya and Vex 7 disappeared into the station's corridors, the warhound was already starting to remember what it felt like to have a purpose beyond violence. Maya's ship wasn't much to look at. The Lucky 7 was a converted cargo hauler, older than some civilizations and held together with spare parts and sheer stubbornness. The hull bore scorch marks from a dozen encounters with pirates, and the life support system wheezed like an old man climbing stairs. But it was home. Vex 7 had to duck to fit through the airlock. His cybernetic sensors automatically cataloged the ship's layout: cargo hold, tiny galley, even tinier sleeping quarters, and a cockpit that had seen better decades. Everything was cramped and worn, but meticulously clean. "I know it's not much," Maya said, sealing the airlock behind them, "but it's got good bones. Dad always said a ship is only as good as the heart that flies her." She led him to the cargo hold, the only space large enough for his bulk. The floor was metal grating, cold against his paws, but Maya had laid out several thick blankets. "This can be your space," she said. "I'll get you some proper bedding when we reach Terminus Station." Vex 7 settled onto the blankets cautiously. They smelled like engine oil and human soap, but they were soft. Softer than anything he'd felt in months. Maya knelt beside him and carefully removed the control collar. "I promised I'd take this off." The collar clattered to the floor. For the first time since the auction, Vex 7 felt like he could breathe properly. "Are you hungry?" Maya asked. "I don't have much, but—" The warhound shook his massive head. Food had lost its appeal long ago. Eating meant staying alive, and staying alive meant more pain, more disappointment, more rejection. Maya seemed to understand. "That's okay. When you're ready." She left him alone in the cargo hold while she prepared the ship for departure. Through the hull, Vex 7 could hear the familiar sounds of a ship coming online, engines warming up, computers running diagnostics, life support systems cycling through their checks. But something was wrong. His enhanced hearing picked up irregularities in the engine harmonics. The power coupling to the jump drive was fluctuating. The atmospheric recycler was running 15% below optimal efficiency. Without thinking, Vex 7 rose and padded to the engine compartment. His cybernetic implants automatically interfaced with the ship's systems, running detailed diagnostics that Maya's basic instruments couldn't perform. The problems were worse than they sounded. The jump drive would fail within the next 3 hyperspace transitions. The life support would last maybe 2 weeks before complete breakdown. The ship was dying, and Maya either didn't know or couldn't afford to fix it. When Maya found him an hour later, Vex 7 was deep in the ship's maintenance access, his cybernetic arms interfacing directly with the primary power distribution node. "What are you doing?" she asked, startled. Vex 7 withdrew from the system and turned to face her. How could he explain? His vocal cords had been damaged in the Battle of Crimson Nebula, leaving him capable of only basic growls and whines. He couldn't speak like the advanced warhounds in the recruitment videos. Instead, he called up a holographic display from his implants, showing the ship's system status. Red warning indicators flashed across nearly every major component. Maya's face went pale. "Oh, you found the problems." She slumped against the bulkhead, looking suddenly much older than her 16 years. "I know the ship's falling apart. Dad left me enough money for parts, but every time I fix one thing, two more break. And the parts dealers on these outer rim stations charge triple for human customers." Vex 7 studied the small human who'd bought him with her last 10 credits. She was trying to keep an ancient ship running with no real mechanical training, and barely enough money for food. She should have been angry about the ship's condition, frustrated with the constant breakdowns. Instead, she just looked tired. The Warhound made a decision that surprised him. He turned back to the power distribution node and resumed his work. "You don't have to do that," Maya said softly. "I know you're not feeling well. I just wanted to give you somewhere safe to rest." But Vex 7 kept working. His cybernetic systems had been designed for war, but they were adaptable. The same neural pathways that once controlled weapons could interface with ship systems. The targeting computers that had once tracked enemies could now diagnose mechanical problems. For the first time in months, he had a purpose that didn't involve violence. By the time they reached the jump point, Vex 7 had improved the ship's efficiency by 12%. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it bought them time. Maya found him in the cargo hold afterward, staring at his reflection in a piece of polished metal. The work had made him feel more like his old self, but it also reminded him of everything he'd lost. "Thank you," she said, settling down beside him on the blankets. "I've been trying to fix that power coupling for weeks." Vex 7 looked at her with eyes that held too much sadness for one creature. "You miss it, don't you?" Maya said, being useful, having a job to do. The Warhound's ears drooped. How had she known? "My dad was a cargo pilot," Maya continued. "Flew freight runs between the outer colonies and the core worlds. When he got sick and couldn't fly anymore, he almost gave up. Said he didn't know who he was if he wasn't flying." She pulled something from her pocket, a small metal disc worn smooth by countless handling. This was his pilot's license, first one issued to a human in this sector. He was so proud of it. She traced the faded lettering with her finger. "After he died, I took over his routes. I'm not licensed yet, which is why I have to stick to the outer rim where nobody checks papers too carefully." Vex 7 tilted his massive head. "Listening. The point is," Maya said, "sometimes when we lose the thing that defined us, we have to find a new definition. Dad went from being a pilot to being a teacher. He taught me everything I know about flying, about engines, about treating people fairly even when they don't treat you the same way." She looked directly into Vex 7's golden eyes. "You were a warrior. That's still part of you, but it doesn't have to be all of you. Maybe you can be something else now, something better." That night, as the ship drifted through hyperspace, Vex 7 lay on his blankets and thought about Maya's words. Through the thin walls, he could hear her moving around the ship, checking systems, making small repairs where she could. She was barely more than a child, alone in a hostile galaxy, flying a dying ship with no money and no legal protection. By all rights, she should have been helpless. But she'd seen something in a broken war machine that nobody else had seen. She'd spent her last credits on a creature that everyone else considered worthless. And somehow, impossibly, she'd made him want to be worthy of that faith. When Maya woke the next morning, she found Vex 7 in the engine room again, this time working on the atmospheric recycler. His cybernetic arms moved with precise efficiency, making adjustments that would have taken her hours to figure out. "Good morning," she said, not surprised to find him working. Vex 7 looked up from his task and made a sound that might have been a greeting. It was the first vocalization he'd made since she'd bought him. Maya smiled. "I think we're going to make a good team." 3 weeks into their partnership, Maya and Vex 7 encountered their first real test. They'd taken a cargo contract to Raven's Rest, a mining colony on the edge of Syndicate space. It was dangerous territory, but the pay was good enough to cover ship repairs and food for both of them. Maya had started buying proper nutrition packs for Vex 7, and slowly the Warhound's appetite was returning. The delivery itself went smoothly. The miners were rough but honest, paying in untraceable credits and asking no questions about Maya's age or lack of proper documentation. It was on the way back to Terminus Station that trouble found them. "Unknown vessel, cut your engines and prepare to be boarded." The voice crackled over the comm system with barely contained violence. Maya's hands flew over the controls, bringing up the sensor display. 3 ships had dropped out of hyperspace around them, sleek Vorten raiders with enough firepower to turn the Lucky Seven into scrap metal. "This is Captain Zorak of the Bloodwind," the voice continued. "We know you're carrying payment from the Raven's Rest miners. Transfer the credits now and we might let you keep your ship." Maya's face had gone pale, but her voice stayed steady. "This is Maya Chen of the Lucky Seven. We're just an independent cargo hauler. We don't have anything worth stealing." Laughter echoed through the comm. "Maya Chen, the human brat flying Daddy's old rust bucket. You think we don't know about you? Transfer the credits, little girl, or we'll take them from your corpse." In the cargo hold, Vex 7's cybernetic systems came online with a sound like charging weapons. His golden eyes snapped to full alertness for the first time since Maya had bought him. Pirates. Armed hostiles. Threat to packmate. His combat programming surged forward, then crashed into the wall of trauma that had broken him. Images flashed through his mind. Plasma fire, screaming packmates, the smell of burning fur and metal. Vex 7 collapsed onto his blankets, shaking. Maya's voice came over the ship's intercom. "Vex, I know you can hear me. Those pirates are going to board us in about 2 minutes. I need you to stay in the cargo hold and keep quiet, okay? Let me handle this." The warhound forced himself to his feet. Through the security feed, he watched Maya hide their earnings inside a false panel, then take out an old plasma pistol that looked older than the ship itself. She was going to try to fight 3 ships full of pirates with a museum piece and pure determination. The airlock cycled open with a hiss. 4 Vorten pirates swaggered aboard, their scaled skin gleaming under the ship's lights. They were big, heavily armed, and completely confident. "Where's the money, little human?" demanded the leader, a scarred brute with cybernetic implants that marked him as a former military officer. "What money?" Maya asked, keeping the pistol hidden behind her back. The Vorten backhanded her casually, sending her sprawling across the floor. "Don't play games with me. We know the miners paid you. Tell us where it is or we start taking this ship apart piece by piece." Maya wiped blood from her split lip and struggled to her feet. "Go to hell." In the cargo hold, Vex 7 watched through the security feed as one of the pirates grabbed Maya by the throat and lifted her off the ground. Her feet kicked helplessly as she gasped for air. The warhound's system screamed warnings at him. Combat situation. Packmate in danger. Immediate action required. But every time he tried to move toward the door, the memories hit him like a physical blow. Plasma fire. Screaming. Death. He was broken. Useless. A failure as a warrior, and a failure as a protector. Maya's struggles were getting weaker. Sometimes when we lose the thing that defined us, we have to find a new definition. Vex 7's head snapped up. Maya's words from that first night echoed in his memory. "You were a warrior. That's still part of you, but it doesn't have to be all of you. Maybe you can be something else now. Something better." He wasn't fighting for the Kalari Empire anymore. He wasn't a weapon pointed at enemies he'd never met for causes he didn't understand. He was protecting his packmate. The difference changed everything. Vex 7 rose to his full height, 8 feet of cybernetically enhanced predator. His combat systems came online smoothly, without the usual crash of trauma. Targeting sensors locked onto heat signatures beyond the bulkhead. Threat assessment algorithms calculated optimal attack vectors. But this time the violence had purpose beyond destruction. The cargo hold door exploded outward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Vex 7 flowed through the opening like liquid death, his 6 legs carrying him forward with silent grace. The first pirate died before he realized what was happening. Vex 7's cybernetic claws punched through armor plating and spine with equal ease. The second managed to turn around before razor-sharp teeth closed on his throat. The pirate holding Maya dropped her and reached for his weapon. He was fast for a Vorten, but not fast enough. Vex 7 hit him like an avalanche, 8 feet of furious war machine driven by protective instinct. The pirate's weapon went flying as they crashed into the bulkhead. The Vorten was strong, but Vex 7 had been designed to kill things much larger and better armed than one aging pirate. It was over in seconds. The remaining pirate, the scarred leader, backed toward the airlock with his hands raised. "Easy, war dog, easy. We'll just take our ship and leave. No harm done." Vex 7 stalked toward him, blood dripping from his claws. His golden eyes burned with cold fire. "Wait," Maya said, pushing herself to her feet. "Vex, stop!" The warhound paused, looking back at her. Blood ran from her nose and her throat was already showing bruises, but she was alive. "Let him go," she said quietly. Vex 7 tilted his head in confusion. The pirate was still a threat. Protocol demanded elimination of all hostile forces. "Please," Maya added. "You're not a killer anymore. Don't let them make you into one again." For a long moment, Vex 7 stared at the cowering pirate. His combat systems urged him to finish the job, to eliminate the threat permanently. Instead, he stepped aside. The scarred Vorthan bolted for the airlock without another word. Within minutes, the 3 raider ships had jumped back into hyperspace, leaving the Lucky 7 alone in the void. Maya slumped against the bulkhead, suddenly exhausted. "Thank you," she whispered. Vex 7 approached her carefully, his massive form somehow gentle despite the blood on his claws. He lowered his head and nuzzled her hand with his snout, a gesture of pack affection that he hadn't performed in years. "You saved me," Maya said, scratching behind his ears. "But more than that, you chose not to kill when you could have. That's what makes you different from them." The warhound's tail actually wagged slightly. It was a tiny movement, barely visible, but it was there. As they cleaned up the aftermath and got the ship back on course, Maya noticed the change in Vex 7. His movements were more confident, his head held higher. The constant flinch at sudden sounds was gone. He was still scarred, still traumatized by his past. But he was no longer broken. "You know," Maya said as they sat in the cargo hold later, "I think you just figured out who you want to be." Vex 7 looked at her with eyes that held warmth instead of emptiness. He was a protector now, a guardian of those who couldn't protect themselves. And for the first time since the Battle of Crimson Nebula, that felt like enough. Word spread quickly through the outer rim about the human girl and her warhound. Pirates who had once seen Maya as easy prey began to give the Lucky 7 a wide berth. Stories grew in the telling. Some claimed Vex 7 could tear through battle armor with his bare claws. Others said he could hack ship systems just by looking at them. The truth was impressive enough without embellishment, but frontier legends were rarely concerned with accuracy. Maya found their new reputation was a double-edged sword. Honest cargo contracts came easier now that potential pirates knew to avoid them, but some station authorities viewed them with suspicion. A human teenager traveling with a military-grade war machine raised questions that Maya couldn't always answer safely. Still, they were making good money. Enough to properly repair the Lucky 7's aging systems, enough to buy decent food and medical supplies, enough to start thinking about the future instead of just surviving, day to day. It was on Meridian Station that everything changed again. Maya was negotiating a cargo contract with the Delarian merchant when she noticed the crowd gathering near the main viewport. Something in their hushed, frightened voices made her excuse herself and push through to see what had captured their attention. Outside the station, a massive Kalari battlecruiser hung in space like a predator studying its prey. The Executor's wrath was nearly 2 kilometers long, bristling with enough weapons to level a small moon. Its hull bore the deep blue markings of the Kalari Military Special Operations Division. "What's a Kalari warship doing out here?" someone whispered. "Heard they're looking for something," another voice replied. Or someone. Maya's blood turned to ice. She backed away from the viewport, her mind racing. The outer rim was supposed to be neutral territory. The Kalari rarely ventured this far from their core systems unless they had a very good reason like hunting down stolen military property. She made it halfway, back to her ship before the announcement echoed through the station's comm system. "Attention, Meridian Station. This is Commander Thex of the Kalari Imperial Navy. We are conducting a search for stolen military assets. All vessel departures are suspended pending completion of our investigation. Compliance is mandatory." Maya's hands shook as she quickened her pace. If the Kalari found Vex 7, they'd take him back. Or worse, they'd destroy him as a defective unit. Either way, she'd lose the best friend she'd ever had. She found Vex 7 in the ship's engine room as usual. He'd become obsessed with keeping the Lucky 7 running at peak efficiency, taking pride in every improvement he made to her aging systems. "Vex," she said, trying to keep her voice calm, "we need to leave, now." The warhound looked up from the plasma coupling he'd been adjusting. His enhanced hearing had already detected the Kalari ship's arrival, and his cybernetic systems were picking up encrypted military communications. They were looking for him. Vex 7's ears drooped. He'd known this day would come eventually. The Kalari Empire didn't abandon their property lightly, even property they considered broken and worthless. "No," Maya said firmly, reading his expression. "We're not giving up. You're not property anymore, remember? You're family." But even as she spoke, Maya knew they were trapped. The Kalari had undoubtedly posted ships at every jump point around the system. The Lucky 7 was fast for a cargo hauler, but she couldn't outrun military interceptors. "All station residents report to designated assembly areas for identification verification," the announcement continued. "Failure to comply will result in immediate detention." Through the ship's sensors, Vex 7 watched as Kalari boarding shuttles began docking with the station. Squads of armored soldiers moved through the corridors with mechanical precision, checking every ship, every cargo hold, every hiding place. Maya paced the small cargo hold like a caged animal. "There has to be something we can do. Some way to—" She stopped mid-sentence as Vex 7 rose to his full height and walked to the emergency equipment locker. With careful precision, he removed the plasma cutter and several sheets of hull plating. "What are you doing?" Maya asked. Vex 7 began cutting the hull plating into specific shapes, his cybernetic arms working with the precision of an engineer. Within minutes, he'd fabricated what looked like a crude cage. Maya's eyes widened in understanding. "No, absolutely not." The Warhound continued his work, welding the pieces together with single-minded determination. "Vex, I won't let them take you back. We'll find another way." But Vex 7 had already calculated the odds. The Kalari would search every ship in the station. When they found him, they'd arrest Maya as an accomplice. She'd spend the rest of her short life in a Kalari prison, if they didn't simply execute her as a terrorist. He finished the cage and dragged it to the center of the cargo hold. Then he did something that broke Maya's heart. He climbed inside and locked the door behind him. "Lucky 7, this is Kalari boarding team Zeta. Prepare for immediate inspection." Maya wiped tears from her eyes and took a shaky breath. If Vex 7 was determined to protect her, the least she could do was play her part convincingly. The airlock cycled open and 4 Kalari soldiers entered, their armor gleaming under the ship's lights. They moved with the same mechanical precision Maya had seen in recruitment videos, their weapons ready but not quite pointed at her. "Human female," the squad leader barked. "State your name and business." "Maya Chen," she replied, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Independent cargo hauler. I'm just here for supplies and trade contracts." The soldiers spread out through the ship, their sensors sweeping every compartment. Maya held her breath as they entered the cargo hold. "What's in the cage?" one of them asked. Maya had rehearsed this moment in her head during the few minutes they'd had to prepare. "Kalari Warhound, model Vex 7. I bought him at auction on Kepler Station. He's damaged, PTSD from combat service. I use him for manual labor when he's stable enough to work." The squad leader approached the cage, studying Vex 7 with professional interest. The Warhound lay motionless on the floor, his cybernetic implants dark, playing the part of a broken machine perfectly. "Show me the purchase documentation," the soldier demanded. Maya produced the auction papers with hands that only trembled slightly. The squad leader scanned them with his helmet's built-in computers. "These appear legitimate," he said after a moment, "but we'll need to verify the unit's identity." He activated a scanner and pointed it at Vex 7. The device beeped softly as it read the Warhound's cybernetic serial numbers and biological markers. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. If the scanner detected any signs that Vex 7 was fully functional, if it picked up the subtle improvements he'd made to his own systems, unit confirmed as Vex 7, the scanner announced. "Status non-operational. Severe psychological trauma detected. Combat effectiveness 0%. Recommendation: scrap for parts." The squad leader grunted in disgust. "Defective unit." No wonder they sold it to a human. He turned away from the cage without another glance. Search complete. No sign of the target. As the soldiers prepared to leave, the squad leader paused at the airlock. "A word of advice, human. Warhounds with PTSD are unpredictable. This one might turn on you without warning. You should have it put down before it becomes dangerous." "I'll consider that," Maya said through gritted teeth. The Kalari left without ceremony, moving on to search the next ship in line. Maya waited until their shuttle had undocked before rushing to open Vex 7's cage. The Warhound emerged slowly, his systems coming back online one by one. The performance had required him to shut down most of his cybernetic functions. essentially playing dead while still conscious. It was a feat that would have been impossible for a truly damaged unit. "You did it," Maya whispered, throwing her arms around his massive neck. "You fooled them completely." Vex 7 nuzzled her gently, but his golden eyes were sad. They both knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The Kalari would keep looking, and eventually someone would recognize him for what he really was. "We'll figure something out," Maya said, more to herself than to him. "We'll find somewhere safe, somewhere they can't reach us." But as the Lucky 7 waited with all the other ships for permission to depart, both of them knew the truth. As long as Vex 7 carried Kalari cybernetics and bore their serial numbers, he would never truly be free. And Maya Chen, 16-year-old cargo pilot with more heart than sense, began to form a plan that would either save them both or destroy everything they'd built together. Maya's plan was insane, dangerous, and probably illegal in 17 different star systems. She was going to steal Vex 7's freedom. The idea had come to her while watching the Kalari soldiers scan his cybernetic implants. As long as those systems carried Imperial identification codes, Vex 7 would always be property of the Kalari military. But cybernetic systems could be modified, reprogrammed, even completely replaced. She just needed to find someone skilled enough to perform surgery on a war machine without killing him in the process. That search led them to Haven Point, a ramshackle space station built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Haven Point existed in the gray areas between legal and illegal, a place where people came when they had nowhere else to go. Pirates, smugglers, political refugees, and wanted criminals all rubbed shoulders in the station's dimly lit corridors. It was also home to the best black market. Cybernetics specialist in 3 sectors, Dr. Yuki Tanaka had once been a promising xenobiology researcher at the prestigious Terran Institute. That was before she'd refused to hand over her research to the military, before the scandal that had destroyed her career, before she'd fled to the Outer Rim with nothing but her skills and a burning hatred for authority. Now she ran a clinic in Haven Point's medical district, treating anyone who could pay her fees and asking no questions about how they'd acquired their injuries. "You want me to do what?" Dr. Tanaka stared at Maya across her cluttered desk, her cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on the young pilot. "Remove his Imperial identification systems and replace them with civilian variants," Maya repeated. "Make it so the Kalari can't track him anymore." Dr. Tanaka leaned back in her chair, studying Vex 7 through the observation window. The Warhound sat patiently in the clinic's main room, his massive form drawing stares from the other patients. "Do you have any idea what you're asking?" the doctor said. "Those aren't just identification chips. They're integrated into his entire nervous system. His combat reflexes, his enhanced senses, his pain inhibitors. All of it runs through Kalari military hardware." "So remove it," Maya said. "I can't just remove it. Those systems are keeping him alive. Pull the wrong component and his brain would shut down permanently." Maya's shoulders slumped. She'd spent their last credits getting to Haven Point, gambling everything on the possibility that Dr. Tanaka could help them. "However," the doctor continued, "I might be able to replace the Imperial systems with something else. Something civilian, untrackable." Hope flared in Maya's chest. "You can do that?" "It would be the most complex procedure I've ever attempted. We're talking about complete cybernetic replacement, while keeping the patient conscious and stable. One mistake and I'd turn your friend into a vegetable." Dr. Tanaka named a price that made Maya's head spin. It was more money than she'd see in 5 years of cargo hauling, enough to buy a new ship instead of keeping their old one running. "I don't have that much," Maya admitted. "Then I'm afraid I can't help you." Maya looked through the observation window at Vex 7, who was trying to make himself smaller to avoid frightening a young Arcturian child. The Warhound had noticed the child's fear and was slowly moving away, his head lowered in submission. "What if we worked for you?" Maya asked suddenly. "To pay off the debt?" Dr. Tanaka raised an eyebrow. "I don't need a cargo pilot and a broken war machine." "Vex isn't broken. He's the best engineer I've ever seen. He's improved my ship's efficiency by 30% and solved problems that would have taken me weeks to figure out." The doctor's cybernetic eye whirred again, reassessing Vex 7 with new interest. "Engineering skills? More than that. He's brilliant with any kind of technology. And he's protective of people who treat him kindly. You could use someone like that in a place like this." Dr. Tanaka was quiet for a long moment, considering. Her clinic serves some of the most dangerous people in the galaxy, and she'd been robbed more than once by patients who decided not to pay their bills. 6 months, she said finally. He works for me for 6 months, and I'll perform the procedure. But I want to talk to him first, make sure he understands what he's agreeing to. Maya's heart raced. He can't speak properly. His vocal cords were damaged in combat. Then we'll find another way to communicate. Dr. Tanaka led them into her consultation room, a sterile white space lined with medical equipment. She gestured for Vex 7 to lie on the examination table, which groaned under his weight. I need to examine your cybernetic systems, she explained, pulling on surgical gloves. May I? Vex 7 looked at Maya, who nodded encouragingly. The warhound had been poked and prodded by so many doctors and technicians over the years that he'd learned to simply endure it. But Dr. Tanaka was different. Her touch was gentle, respectful. She explained each step of her examination, asking permission before accessing his more sensitive systems. Remarkable, she murmured, studying the readouts on her instruments. Whoever designed these modifications was a genius. The integration between biological and artificial systems is seamless. She looked directly into Vex 7's golden eyes. You understand what we're proposing? We want to remove all the Kalari hardware and replace it with civilian equivalents. You'd lose some of your enhanced capabilities, but you'd be free of Imperial control. Vex 7 considered this carefully. His combat systems had defined him for so long that the thought of losing them was frightening. But those same systems had also been used to control him, to turn him into a weapon against his will. He slowly nodded his massive head. There are risks, Dr. Tanaka continued. The procedure could kill you or leave you permanently disabled. Are you willing to accept those risks for your freedom? Another nod, more emphatic this time. Dr. Tanaka smiled, the first genuine warmth Maya had seen from her. Then we have an agreement. 6 months of work, and I'll give you a new identity that no Kalari scanner will ever recognize. The next 6 months were unlike anything Vex 7 had experienced. Since his military service, Dr. Tanaka's clinic was constantly busy, treating everyone from injured miners to poisoned assassins. Vex 7 found himself serving as security, engineer, and occasionally surgical assistant. His size and obvious military background deterred most troublemakers, while his gentle nature helped calm frightened patients. Maya took cargo contracts from Haven Point, using the station as their base while Vex 7 worked off their debt. She visited the clinic every few days, bringing supplies and checking on her friend's progress. Slowly, Vex 7 began to heal in ways that had nothing to do with surgery. Working with Dr. Tanaka gave him purpose beyond violence or mechanical repair. When a young Vorthan girl came in with severe burns from a mining accident, Vex 7 held her steady while the doctor worked, his presence somehow calming her fear. When gang members tried to rob the clinic, a single growl from the warhound sent them fleeing without a fight. He was protecting people again, but this time by choice rather than programming. Dr. Tanaka began teaching him basic medical procedures, amazed by how quickly he learned. His cybernetic systems could interface with the clinic's diagnostic equipment, providing more detailed scans than her instruments could manage alone. You have a gift for healing, she told him one day after he'd successfully diagnosed a rare toxin poisoning that she'd missed. Have you ever considered a career in medicine? Vex 7 tilted his head curiously. He'd never thought about what he might do with his life beyond survival and service to others. Think about it, Dr. Tanaka said. After the surgery, you'll need a new purpose. Something to build your identity around besides your military past. As the months passed, Vex 7 found himself looking forward to the work, to the grateful smiles of patients he'd helped, to the satisfaction of solving medical puzzles that challenged his enhanced intellect. For the first time since the Battle of Crimson Nebula, he was thinking about the future instead of hiding from the past. And when Dr. Tanaka finally pronounced their debt paid and scheduled his surgery for the following week, Vex 7 realized he'd found something he thought he'd lost forever. He'd found hope. The surgery took 18 hours. Maya paced the clinic's waiting room like a caged animal, drinking terrible coffee and jumping at every sound from the operating theater. Dr. Tanaka had warned her that the procedure would be long and dangerous, but knowing that didn't make the waiting any easier. Through the observation window, she could see the surgical team working with mechanical precision. Vex 7 lay motionless on the table, his massive form connected to a dozen different machines that monitored his vital signs. Dr. Tanaka moved around him like a conductor leading an orchestra, her hands steady despite the complexity of what she was attempting. "This is the tricky part," the doctor had explained before they'd begun. "I have to remove each Imperial component and replace it with a civilian equivalent without interrupting the neural pathways. It's like rewiring a starship while the engines are running." Hour after hour passed. Maya watched medical staff rotate in and out of the theater, but Dr. Tanaka never left Vec 7's side. The woman was a perfectionist, checking and rechecking every connection before moving to the next system. At hour 12, one of the monitors began screaming alarms. Maya pressed her face against the observation window, her heart stopping as she watched the surgical team rush around Vec 7's prone form. His brain activity had spiked dangerously high, threatening to overload his newly installed neural processors. Dr. Tanaka worked frantically to stabilize him, her cybernetic eye glowing as it interfaced directly with the monitoring equipment. For 10 minutes that felt like 10 years, Vec 7 balanced on the edge between life and death. Then the alarms fell silent, and his vitals returned to normal. Maya collapsed into a chair, shaking with relief and exhaustion. At hour 16, another crisis. This time, Vec 7's enhanced immune system began rejecting the new cybernetics, threatening to shut down his major organs. Dr. Tanaka had to inject him with powerful immunosuppressants while simultaneously reprogramming his biological systems to accept the foreign hardware. "Come on, big guy," Maya whispered against the observation window. "Don't give up now. Not when we're so close." Finally, after 18 hours that felt like 18 days, Dr. Tanaka emerged from the operating theater. Her surgical scrubs were soaked with sweat, her hands trembling from exhaustion, but she was smiling. "It's done," she said simply. Maya rushed into the recovery room, where Vec 7 lay surrounded by monitoring equipment. His cybernetic implants looked different now, sleeker, more refined without the harsh military aesthetic of his original hardware. "The new systems are fully integrated," Dr. Tanaka explained. "I've replaced every component that carried Imperial identification codes. As far as any scanner is concerned, he's now a civilian cybernetic organism with no military history." "Will he still be able to do everything he could before?" Maya asked. "Most of it. His enhanced strength and senses are intact, though not quite at military levels. His interface capabilities are actually improved. The civilian systems are more versatile than the military ones. And I've added something special." Dr. Tanaka activated a wall display showing a complex neural map. "I've installed a medical diagnostic suite in his cognitive matrix. He can now perform detailed health scans of biological organisms just by touching them. Combined with his engineering skills, he could become an excellent field medic or even a full doctor with proper training." Vec 7's eyes fluttered open, golden irises focusing slowly on Maya's face. His new systems were still calibrating, adjusting to their biological host, but his mind was clear. "Hey there," Maya said softly, taking his massive paw in both her hands. "How do you feel?" The warhound tried to speak and managed only a rough whisper. "Different," he said, his voice box still adapting to its new configuration. "But free." It was the first word he'd spoken since before the Battle of Crimson Nebula. Maya burst into tears, relief and joy overwhelming her carefully maintained composure. "You can talk again, still." "Learning," Vec 7 said slowly. "New systems. Need time." Dr. Tanaka checked his monitoring equipment one final time. "Everything looks good. The integration is proceeding normally. You'll need a few weeks to fully adapt, but the hard part is over." She looked at both of them seriously. "There's something else you need to know." The procedure generated a completely new identity profile for Vec 7. As far as official records are concerned, he's now a civilian cybernetic organism named 7, manufactured by Titan Industries for medical and engineering applications. "7?" Maya asked. "Your lucky number," Vec 7 said with something that might have been a smile. Seemed appropriate. Over the following weeks, 7 learned to use his new identity and capabilities. His voice grew stronger each day as his vocal processors fully integrated with his biological systems. His movements became more fluid as his neural pathways adapted to the civilian hardware. Most importantly, he began to discover who he was when he wasn't defined by military Service or trauma? Seven threw himself into medical study with the same intensity he'd once applied to combat. Tactics. Dr. Tanaka became his teacher, showing him how to use his new diagnostic abilities to help patients in ways that went far beyond physical repair. Medicine is about more than fixing broken bodies, she explained during one of their lessons. It's about understanding suffering and finding ways to heal it. You know what trauma feels like, what it means to feel broken and discarded. That empathy makes you a better healer than any textbook knowledge ever could. Maya watched Seven's transformation with amazement and pride. The broken war machine she'd bought at auction was gone, replaced by someone who chose healing over violence, protection over destruction. But their new life was tested when the Kalari returned. A different ship this time, a fast courier vessel rather than a massive battle cruiser. Commander Thex himself came aboard Haven Point with a small security detail, following up on reports of Kalari military assets in the sector. Maya's blood turned to ice when she saw him enter Dr. Tanaka's clinic, his reptilian features set in an expression of cold determination. "I'm looking for a warhound," he announced. "Model Vex 7. Our records indicate it was purchased at auction by a human female matching your description." Maya's hands shook as she set down the medical supplies she'd been organizing. "I'm sorry, Commander, but I don't know what you're talking about." Commander Thex studied her with predatory eyes. "Don't lie to me, human. I've been tracking this unit for months. Our intelligence suggests it may have been modified or hidden." That's when Seven entered from the back room, carrying a tray of surgical instruments. He moved with calm confidence, his new civilian implants gleaming under the clinic's lights. Commander Thex glanced at him dismissively. "Civilian medical unit model 7? "That's right," Seven said, his voice now smooth and controlled. "I assist Dr. Tanaka with her patients. Is there something I can help you with?" The Kalari commander's scanner beeped as it analyzed Seven's cybernetic signature. Titan Industries manufacture. Medical and engineering specialization. No military history detected. Seven stood perfectly still as the scanner ran its complete analysis. His new identity held up flawlessly, showing no trace of his imperial origins. "Clean scan," Commander Thex muttered, frustrated. No sign of the target. He turned back to Maya with suspicious eyes. "Where's the warhound you purchased?" Maya met his gaze steadily. "He died 3 months ago. System failure brought on by combat trauma. I had him scrapped for parts. It wasn't entirely a lie. Vex 7 had died on that operating table, even if 7 had been born from the same body." Commander Thex studied her for a long moment, then gestured to his security team. "Search the station. Check every ship, every hiding place. The unit is here somewhere." They spent 6 hours turning Haven Point upside down, scanning every cybernetic organism they could find. But Vex 7 was gone, erased as completely as if he'd never existed. Seven continued his work throughout the search, calmly treating patients and assisting Dr. Tanaka as if nothing unusual was happening. When one of the Kalari soldiers was injured in an accident, Seven even provided medical assistance, his diagnostic systems helping to identify internal bleeding that the soldier's own medical equipment had missed. "Excellent work," Commander Thex told Dr. Tanaka as they prepared to leave. "Your medical unit is quite skilled." "Thank you," Dr. Tanaka replied. "Seven is one of the best assistants I've ever had." As the Kalari ship departed, Maya finally allowed herself to breathe again. They'd done it. Seven was truly free, his past erased and his future his own to determine. "So what now?" she asked him that evening as they sat in the clinic's break room. Seven considered the question carefully. "Dr. Tanaka offered me permanent position here. Chance to learn, to help people, to become real doctor." "And leave the Lucky 7? Maya asked, trying to hide her disappointment. "No," Seven said firmly. "We are pack. We stay together. But maybe we find new purpose. Medical transport, perhaps, bringing healing to places that need it." Maya smiled, remembering the broken creature she'd bought at auction all those months ago. Dr. Seven and Captain Chen, Humanitarian Cargo Service? Has nice sound to it, Seven agreed. 6 months later, the Lucky 7 had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic space, a mobile medical facility. Maya and Seven had pooled their resources to retrofit the old cargo hauler with state-of-the-art medical equipment. The former cargo bay now housed a fully equipped surgical suite, diagnostic labs, and recovery wards. They'd even managed to install a small cybernetics workshop, where Seven could perform emergency repairs on patients with artificial organs or limbs. Their reputation spread quickly through the Outer Rim colonies. When plague struck the mining settlements on Kepler's edge, Maya and Seven were there within days, treating hundreds of patients with medicines that would have taken weeks to arrive through official channels. When a terrorist bombing devastated a space station in the Vega sector, they worked alongside emergency responders to save lives that conventional medical teams couldn't reach. Seven had blossomed in his new role. His unique combination of engineering expertise and medical knowledge made him invaluable in crisis situations. He could repair a damaged life support system and perform surgery on its injured operator within the same hour. His enhanced strength allowed him to work tirelessly for days without rest, while his diagnostic abilities could detect problems that human doctors might miss, but it was his bedside manner that truly set him apart. The former war machine had an infinite well of patience for the sick and injured. He would sit with dying patients through their final hours, his massive presence somehow comforting rather than intimidating. Children who were terrified of medical procedures would calm down when Seven spoke to them in his gentle voice, explaining each step of their treatment with careful patience. "You have a gift," Dr. Tanaka had told him during their last visit to Haven Point. "Not just for healing bodies, but for healing spirits." That's rarer than any cybernetic enhancement. Maya had never been prouder of anyone in her life. They were returning from a successful mission to the Arcturus colony when Commander Thex finally sprung his trap. "Medical vessel Lucky 7, this is Kalari Battle Group Crimson. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded." Maya's blood turned to ice as 3 Kalari warships dropped out of hyperspace around them. The lead vessel was the Executor's Wrath, Commander Thex's flagship, but the other 2 were even larger. Massive dreadnoughts capable of reducing entire planets to ash. "This is Captain Maya Chen of the medical vessel Lucky 7, she responded, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We're operating under neutral medical protocols. What's the nature of this intercept?" Commander Thex's voice crackled over the comm with cold satisfaction. "Captain Chen, how nice to see you again. I believe you have something that belongs to the Kalari Empire." In the medical bay, Seven's enhanced hearing picked up every word of the exchange. His new systems began running threat assessments automatically, old military instincts awakening despite his transformation. But something was different this time. Instead of the paralyzing fear that had once overwhelmed him in combat situations, Seven felt only calm determination. These soldiers were threatening his packmate, his patients, his new purpose. He would not allow that. "I don't know what you're talking about, Commander," Maya said. "We're a legitimate medical operation, fully licensed and—" "Enough games," Thex snarled. "I've spent months investigating your activities, Captain Chen. Did you really think you could hide a Kalari war machine by giving it a new paint job?" The boarding shuttles launched immediately, giving Maya no time to run or hide. Within minutes, Kalari soldiers were swarming through the Lucky 7's corridors with weapons drawn. Maya met them at the airlock, her hands raised in surrender. "This is a medical vessel operating under galactic humanitarian law. You have no authority to—" "We have every authority to reclaim stolen military property," Commander Thex said as he stepped aboard. His reptilian eyes gleamed with triumph. "Where is the Warhound? I told you before he died months ago." "Then you won't mind if we search your ship." The Kalari spread through the Lucky 7 like a plague, their scanners probing every corner for signs of military-grade cybernetics. Maya followed helplessly as they tore through her carefully organized medical supplies, contaminating sterile equipment with their rough handling. They found Seven in the surgical suite, calmly sterilizing instruments after completing an operation on a young refugee who'd been injured in a transport accident. The patient, a Dalarian girl no more than 10 years old, watched fearfully from her recovery bed as the soldiers burst in. "Civilian medical unit," one of the soldiers reported. "Model 7, Titan Industries manufacture." Commander Thex entered the surgical suite, his scanner already analyzing Seven's cybernetic signature. The device showed the same clean readings it had produced on Haven Point. No trace of Imperial hardware, no military identification codes. But Thex wasn't satisfied with electronic verification. "You," he said, pointing at Seven. "Turn around slowly. Seven complied, moving with deliberate calm despite the weapons trained on him. The Kalari commander studied him with predatory intensity, looking for any sign that might betray his true identity. Remarkable resemblance to a Kalari warhound, Thex mused. Same species, same general build. But the cybernetics are all wrong. Too refined for military use. He stepped closer, his scanner running continuous sweeps. Still, I've learned not to trust appearances. Medical Unit 7, submit to detailed examination. Commander, Maya interrupted. This is harassment. 7 is a civilian medical professional. You have no right to— I have every right to investigate potential theft of Imperial property. Thex gestured to his soldiers, who moved to restrain 7. That's when the young Delarian patient spoke up. Please don't hurt him, she whispered, her voice barely audible through the translator device. He saved my life. He's not a soldier, he's a healer. More voices joined hers. Throughout the medical bay, patients who'd been treated by 7 began speaking up. A grizzled miner whose infected wounds 7 had cleaned and dressed. A transport pilot whose cybernetic arm 7 had repaired after a crash. A pregnant woman whose difficult delivery 7 had assisted with, saving both mother and child. He fixed my son's heart, said an elderly human woman. When the doctors on Titan Station said there was nothing they could do, 7 found a way. He worked for 3 days straight to save my crew after we were poisoned by contaminated rations, added a freighter captain. Never asked for payment, never complained about the danger. One by one, patients and their families testified to 7's compassion and skill. Stories of lives saved, of pain eased, of hope restored by a gentle giant who asked nothing in return for his service. Commander Thex listened to the testimonials with growing frustration. His scanner showed no Imperial signatures, his extensive search had revealed no hidden war machines, and dozens of witnesses were vouching for 7's humanitarian work. But still, something nagged at him. You were there, he said suddenly, his eyes boring into 7's golden gaze. At the Battle of Crimson Nebula. I commanded the assault fleet that day. There was a warhound in the enemy position, who fought like a demon until the very end. Unit Vex 7 met his stare without flinching. I am 7, he said simply. Medical assistant. I have never been to this Crimson Nebula. Prove it, Thex snarled. Show me your earliest memory files. Commander, Maya protested, you're asking him to violate his own privacy. That's illegal under humanitarian law, yes, I know. Thex smiled coldly. But if this unit has nothing to hide, surely he won't object to a simple memory scan. 7 considered the request carefully. His early memory files had been completely rewritten during the surgery, replaced with fabricated records of his manufacture and early service. Dr. Tanaka had been thorough in erasing his past, but there was risk in allowing a deep scan. If Thex found any trace of military programming, any hint of his true identity, I consent, 7 said quietly. The memory scan took 15 minutes. Commander Thex himself operated the equipment, probing deep into 7's cognitive matrix for any trace of military experience or combat programming. What he found was exactly what 7 had hoped he would. Fine memories of awakening in a Titan Industries facility, his personality matrix initializing for the first time. Early training in medical procedures and engineering protocols. His first assignment to a civilian hospital, where he'd learned to interact with biological patients. No trace of combat experience. No memories of military service. No hint that he'd ever been anything other than what he appeared to be. Commander Thex stared at the readout in disbelief. This is impossible. The resemblance is too perfect, the timing too convenient. Sometimes coincidence is just coincidence, Maya said. Thex rounded on her, his frustration boiling over. I know you're hiding something, human. I can feel it, but I can't prove it with the evidence I have. He gestured to his soldiers. Pack it up. We're leaving. As the Kalari filed out of the medical bay, Thex paused at the doorway. This isn't over, Captain Chen. I'll be watching you. Both of you. Watch all you want, Maya replied. We've got work to do. After the Kalari had departed, Maya found 7 in the surgical suite, carefully checking each piece of equipment to ensure the soldiers hadn't damaged anything critical. Are you okay? She asked.